I was strangely reassured by the Ethereal Society, a sort of spiritual home guard, beavering away endlessly on our behalf. I mean, the idea of cosmic masters on other planets may seem a bit screwball, but at least these good people of Fulham, busily propelling their prayers to the latest disaster, seem to place their trust in human development. When the next master arrives openly in a spacecraft, he won't be condemning people to an eternity of hellfire, but simply taking some of us off to be reborn on another planet and leaving others behind on Earth to build the new age.
They won't be destroyed. They'll go elsewhere to have a different kind of evolution, a more primitive...
Elsewhere in the planetary system?
I believe it will be in this solar system, but it may not be a planet we know of at the moment.
Yes, some apocalypses do seem nicer than others. Not that I can believe a word they say, but talking to them about their predictions made one big difference to me. It made me think I might have discovered the reason why the British don't get particularly excited about doom-laden scientific predictions. Could it be that we've been lulled into a false sense of security by all the failed religious predictions? Which failures? That's next.
About this second coming. We may have 2 years before the rapture.
If you're not saved, you better get to know him because he's coming soon.
You can't beat the Americans when it comes to announcing the end. So why don't the British take such matters equally seriously? Could it be anything to do with the long history of such predictions, the long history of their failure? I mean, in the last few years alone, we've learned that the world will end on Christ's 2000th birthday. It didn't. That the Antichrist would arrive on April the 10th, 1997. Well, he failed to show. And that an alien army would attack Earth. That was again in 1997, but it seems to have lost its way. The prophets of such dates have always had to wake up in the morning after the fateful date and admit that for reasons, well, I don't know, somehow beyond their control, they got it wrong yet again. It's probably this happy cynicism about the fate of end-of-world predictions that generates so much of the humour about the historically persecuted Jehovah's Witnesses. Damien Thompson, who spent years of his life studying dozens and dozens of apocalyptic religions, can't resist mentioning their recent spectacular prophetic failures.
Their big humiliation came in 1975 when the leaders of the Jehovah's Witnesses convinced themselves that the millennium, the reign of Christ on earth would begin at that time. And when it didn't, there was tremendous embarrassment and a certain rewriting of history, it has to be said, with all sorts of senior Jehovah's Witnesses saying, we never said it and I never believed it anyway. But if you want to embarrass a Jehovah's Witness on your doorstep, and there's no reason why you should, but if you do, just say 1975.
You shouldn't be here. Why didn't you go in 75?
And this is one of the sort of leitmotifs of apocalyptic groups. They name a date, then it gets uncomfortably close. A bit of recalculation goes on, and they either say, oh, we got it wrong, or there's been a new revelation, and basically it gets put back a bit. Nothing embarrasses a religion more than pointing out that they began by believing that the world was about to end. In the case of Christianity, churches have to negotiate the very difficult and awkward fact that Jesus himself implies very strongly that the world will end in the lifetime of his listeners. So in other words, churches have to say to themselves, did Jesus get it wrong?
When the British reign got too much, it's not hail and brimstone, Damien whispered to me, and forced us inside his office at the Catholic Herald. I asked the question that had been nagging me for some time.
People might be able to tell you the date when the world was going to end, but very few seem to have made any concrete plans based upon knowledge of that date. You know, they hadn't got extra tins in.
It's one of the questions people don't ask. If you have a very strong idea that Jesus is coming back in the next few years, and to be honest, most apocalyptic believers do shy away from dates. I have to say, yes, most of them are a bit nervous about that, but they can be very clear that Jesus is coming within their lifetimes. Why haven't you done anything about it? Now, occasionally, an apocalyptic sect will stockpile tins of baked beans and machine guns to prepare for the end, and everybody laughs at them. But what my feeling is that, well, if you do hold these beliefs, then at least you're taking their implications seriously.
Yeah.
I think the essence of apocalyptic belief is signs of the end rather than the end itself. The signs are a way of making sense of a confusing world, and that's the heart of the matter, rather than anticipating the date of the end.
Damien's point about how established religions don't like to talk too much about the end made me think of the Jews. Weren't we always told that Jews were waiting and waiting for their very own Messiah to finally arrive? I mean, it's not something that my metropolitan Jewish friends ever choose to discuss, but what's the view of the more orthodox among Britain's 300,000 Jews? Out at the Mill Hill Synagogue, Rabbi Yitzhak Shoket is already counting the days.
Fundamental to Jewish belief is the fact that when God created the world, according to Jewish calculation 5,766 years ago, it was already implanted at that earliest point in time that there would come an end of days, just in terms of the way the world runs at present. So in Jewish calculation, that would be effectively roughly 234 years from the present. That's the absolute end.
We're not talking about the destruction of the earth. We're talking about the Messiah, a Messiah returning, or a Messiah coming to the earth, and that is a signal for a number of events to then follow.
Indeed.
Would you go so far as to say you are living in end times, that you are, we are approaching the end?
The master Kabbalists themselves have said already for a number of years that we are living on what they describe as the threshold of the messianic redemption. Yeah. So in that context, certainly so.
Is there a concept then of Armageddon? Is there a concept of a battle, some routing of the non-believers?
There is a discussion in the scriptures which implies some sort of catastrophic war that is to be fought. Again, it's not a necessity. Certain things are vague as to whether they have to necessarily manifest themselves. Some will have suggested that the Holocaust itself was a manifestation of that, and to that end, that is like a prelude, if you like, before the Messianic redemption. Others will maintain that no, there is yet another great battle to come, while still a third school of thought suggests that it's not a necessity. It's something that might have to manifest itself, again, if the world is totally undeserving and without merit, but not an absolute criteria to the end of days, or as a prelude to the Messianic redemption.
You're required to pray for the coming of the Messiah.
You are certainly required to not only just to pray, but indeed to yearn and to hope and to feel within the depths of your being for this every single day.
You would want to say that when you look out at the world today, you see signs of its ending in its present form.
I would see signs of a world that is certainly in crisis, increasingly so. And I live with the belief that ultimately those crises will abate with the Messianic redemption, which I certainly yearn and believe will happen very soon.
Religions which predict the end have two material problems, because they not only have to predict the time when the Messiah or the Mahdi might arrive, but they also have to have some way of recognizing that arrival. After all, it might not be the Messiah at all, but the dreaded Antichrist. No such problem exists for one religious group. The Rastafarian Messiah arrived on Earth on July the 23rd, 1892. His name? Tafari Makinen, better known after his assumption of Ethiopia's throne as Haile Selassie.